something is happening with men. I have noticed something different about men recently. It is beautiful. I am sensing it in Ireland in the last few weeks with the protests. But what is really interesting is that for the past few months, this has been mirrored in my own experience and interactions with men. I have to say, I'm loving it. I have been watching coverage of the protests in Ireland. Well, protest is the word that is being used for lack of a better one. It feels different to me though. It feels like the genie is out of the bottle and he's not going back in. It feels like a sovereign stand has been taken. Like a group of men have come together and suddenly realised something. Perhaps it would be more accurate to say remembered something or awakened something long dormant. It is beautiful, and my prayer is that it continues in the energy in which it began. In a land that has experienced so much loss and bloodshed, I can feel a delicate and gentle approach being invoked, consciously or unconsciously, all topped off with a sprinkle of humour, which is a staple here for navigating challenges. It is one thing to see this unfold in social media, out there, but quite the experience to witness it in my day-to-day life. I have some stories to share, and I invite you to join me as I recount what I have noticed recently. A few months ago, I was in a cafe doing some work on my laptop, and a man leaned over and asked me what I did. He said he had seen me a few times and was curious. I honestly didn't know what to say, but I began rambling in the hope that something would make sense. Singer-songwriter, living lineage guide, writer. What followed was a long conversation about all manner of things. I think the myth of Sophia was mentioned, God, fractals, cosmic cycles, and I did my usual standing up for the beauty of humanity when what I call the human bashing started, as it inevitably does. We have such a poor view of ourselves as a species. His viewpoint tended to stem from what I might consider a more mainstream frame of reference. And as I posed possible perspectives and expansions on topics based on my own studies or experiences of the esoteric and mystical kind, he seemed interested, asked questions, and appeared to ponder what he heard. We talked for a long time. Then he told me that if he saw me in the cafe in the future when he was with others, not to be offended if he didn't come over and speak to me. It was just that the other people wouldn't understand the things we were talking about. I reassured him that firstly, I knew what it was like to be considered quirky, unusual, or too deep, as this is the place where I have lived my life. And secondly, that he wasn't the only man I had encountered that seemed to be waking up in a life that didn't quite fit anymore. And I understood where he was coming from. What I will say here is that when I'm asked to convey my ideas on subjects, what I say comes from study, self-inquiry, lived experience, and intuition, and often from a place or dimension I'm not quite sure I could pinpoint. I am very curious and can usually hear, see, or sense a deeper level to things, so I go exploring. I do not have definitive answers, and as I've said before, if someone tells you they do, I invite you to run what they say through your body and psyche to see how it sits with you. Back to my recent encounters. On another occasion, again a few months ago, I was in a shop and there were two men behind the counter. Okay, I said shop, but I meant off licence. I was buying wine. I heard one of them mention he was having car trouble but that his car was a 2009 model, implying that it was old and to be expected. As I came to the counter, I involved myself in the conversation. I said my car was a 2009 model. It was great, and not to give up on his car. About 3 weeks ago, my lovely car of 17 years, Monica, bit the dust. It was emotional. My son and I have had many adventures in that car. Last week, I got another car, and the day I did, I was visiting the shop, and the same two men were behind the counter. "Lads, we scudded my car," I told them, a colloquial way of saying we jinxed it. I explained what had happened, and they listened with sympathy. I admitted that my old car had gotten a bit rickety, and I needed something safe for faffing about and going to magical wells. The man with the ailing car looked at me with his eyes alight and asked, "What magical wells?" Another beautiful conversation followed, which included magical wells, obviously, and homeopathy, shifts in consciousness, and more. He seemed genuinely enchanted by the idea of it all. Perhaps none of this sounds particularly unusual, but I have to say that when I bring things I have studied, experienced, and am interested in into the conversation with people in my local area, I get the distinct impression that I am considered a kook, eccentric, and affectionately tolerated for having my head in the clouds. Once, while ordering chamomile tea, the barista asked me what it tasted like. I couldn't really describe it, but I said it was good for calming and relaxing. They responded by saying they didn't believe in things like that. I say this not as judgment. I see this as a symptom of how far collectively we have drifted from our indigeneity, the earth, and our sense of who we are. I mean, only to demonstrate a typical experience for me in the area in which I live. So to my last story. A couple of days ago, I was standing in a second-hand shop browsing when a man who worked there came to stand beside me and began talking. He jokingly asked if I was interested in the pair of Dior boots that were in a glass cabinet. I pointed out that they were size 3. I asked what he thought I was going to do with them, wear them on my hands or as a pair of earrings. I am 5 feet 11 inches tall. My feet are not size 3 by any stretch of the imagination. We laughed about it. The boots were suede with tassels. He said that someone had told him they were like something that would have been worn in the 80s. I reminisced and replied I could imagine them with leg warmers. My mum and her knitting machine used to keep the village I grew up in supplied with leg warmers and fingerless gloves in the 80s. So he asked what village I grew up in, and off we went into a long conversation. This time I think there may have been mention of dream time and blood mysteries. He was loving it. He told me he loved me, and he could spend ages just talking about dreams. Suddenly, I am encountering men who are thirsty for conversations about ideas and concepts that are not easily uncovered without the desire to go looking. They are not going to be brought to you by mainstream media and conventional establishments. But something has changed, and men seem to want to talk about these things. Ideas of what reality is, what it is to be human here, now. Whether what we have been educated to see as truth is actually the whole story, and how all this relates to the earth, cosmos, and beyond. It feels significant. I am Nina Sophia. I help people discern unhelpful lineage patterns and work with them creatively for healing and transformation, so they can begin to live the life they have always felt was possible, but seemed out of reach. Visit ninasophia.me to find out more. To book a free clarity call, and access some free resources. And if you join Sounds of Sophia as a paid subscriber on Substack for £5 per month, you get access to live Zoom events with me at the solstices, equinoxes and cross quarters, along with weekly mini meditations that guide you to explore your inner world, get familiar with it, and begin to shape your reality to your liking. I have for a long time felt something coming. I can sense change before it happens, but I don't necessarily know what it will look like. It can be easy to think that change is going to be big or grand, and that it's going to happen way off in the future, based on the limits of a current mindset. But what I'm witnessing is not happening in temples or sacred sites. It's not a vision of some future where things are different and better than they are in this imperfect moment. It is unfolding in cafes and charity shops, off licenses and farms. It warms my heart. I'm looking forward to witnessing what unfolds as men remember the deeper truth of who they are and the beauty they possess. I am curious. Are you noticing anything changing with the men in your life? And if you are a man, have you felt a shift?